What's up, everyone? Coach Laxball here. Today I want to talk about how and when do we sub on the lacrosse field. Shout out to Faisal with this awesome question. He threw it in the comments a few weeks back, and I want to get back to this video talking about where do we sub on the lacrosse field and how does this just work in general. So lacrosse is dubbed the fastest game on 2 feet. So with that comes quick substitutions, and it can make it a challenge. That is totally understandable because in lacrosse we sub on the fly. It's not like basketball or soccer where there's a stoppage, ball goes out of bounds, then we start rotating our guys in. No, it's more like hockey where we do kind of a shift change. You have guys coming in, guys going out, all at the same time as play is happening. So there's a little bit of strategery to this on the field. So you want to make sure you are doing it just right. If we take a look at this map here of a lacrosse field, you will see there is a specified area where substitutions happen. It is a box that's about 20 yards wide. Well, not about. It is 20 yards wide. It's 20 yards wide in the middle of the field. 10 yards on one side, 10 yards on the other side of the field. The goal is to get the right personnel in the field. So you could be subbing your offensive players or your defensive players, depending upon which side of the field you're heading. But if only it were as simple as getting an offensive and defensive player onto the field, there's a lot more to this. And if you do it right, you actually can create opportunities to score goals. So now that we know what substitution is, let's talk about the 3 main strategic rules. Strategy. Great rules. Strategic. So now that we know what subbing in lacrosse is, let's talk about my basic strategy, which involves 3 great rules. Number 1 is never, ever sub on defense. Do not get to your defensive half of the field and then decide, you know what? I'm pretty tired. I'm going to run off that field right now. Why? Think about it for a minute. There are 6 field players on your defensive end, plus a goalie, so 7. If you run off the field, the other team now has 6 players and you have 5 players. You just gave them a fantastic opportunity to score a goal. They are now man up in that situation. It is almost like you had a penalty. Do not ever sub when you're on the defensive end. Number 2, you need to communicate. When you are substituting, you need to communicate. The box is a crazy place. That's what we call the substitution box. The box is a crazy place. In fact, there are coaches dedicated, a box coach. If you only have 2 coaches on the field, one that coaches offense, one that coaches defense, when the ball flips and goes to the other side, whoever was the offensive coach now becomes the box coach. Flips the other way, now the defensive coach becomes the box coach because it is that important. You need to communicate loudly because you do not want to be caught off sides. You do not want to be caught with one player subbing off and no players ready to go in. So oftentimes we'll talk about coming off the field, yelling 1 if you're the first one coming off, yelling 2 if you're the second one coming off. That way the next person knows it's time to go. Communicate with your team. And last, the third part of my basic strategy, gosh, I feel like I'm so proud of myself. The third part of my basic strategy is to make sure you win at the box. What does that mean? That means when you are running off, when you are getting off the field, you are subbing, you can beat someone to that sideline, which means your partner, hey there, partner, the person coming in for you should be able to beat their person getting onto the field. If we win at the box, you can create an advantage for your team. The other way you can do it is utilizing the width of the box. There is 20 yards. We just mentioned that. There's 20 yards in the box. Do not substitute in all the way up at midfield or the other side. Substitute at the closest point. You are running to the closest point to you. You sprint to the closest point to you. That allows your player that is substituting on to go to wherever they need to go, and they will get to the closest point to where they want to enter the field. And when they come onto the field, because we've got room, they should be running. So that's my basic strategy on substitutions, but let's talk about if you are a player and you are in that moment, what should you be thinking about as you're on the field and the transition happens? So let's first start talking about, let's say you're on offense and you're now transitioning to defense. Goalie made a save, ball went out of bounds, whatever. What's the main thing that you should be doing? Well, I kind of like 3, so we'll break it down in 3 yet again. Number 1, you need to find the closest opponent to you. Ideally, if you're a midi, it's going to be a midi. Typically, attack and defense, you're not subbing off so much. That's more complicated. We won't talk about that today. But if you are a midfielder, look for the closest player to you, and hopefully that is a midfielder. If you can make it a midfielder, make it a midfielder. Your job is to find that person immediately. Because if you are now on defense, meaning the other team has the ball, you want to stop them from any kind of break whatsoever. Do not let them get an easy pass upfield and turn it into a fast break on the other end, because then it becomes a highlight reel and then it's SC top 10 and you don't want to be on the opposite side of that.
Y'all want to see a dead body?
Next, now that you're on your new homeboy or homegirl, you want to identify, are they a threat to catch a pass? If they're not, and you are right next to the box, could you just kind of step over a little bit and jump out and your long stick midi can come on, or a defensive midi can come on? If you have plenty of room and plenty of time, you know that your player is not going to catch the ball and you can jump off real quick. That way your defensive player could get on. Go ahead and do it, but make sure you are confident, because if we get caught with you subbing off, that next practice ain't gonna be fun. And last, if you're in that transition onto your defensive end, stick with your player. If you didn't get to sub off with them, if you didn't have that chance to jump off the field real quick and get your defensive player on, you gotta be ready to play defense. And whatever that means in your system, does that mean you're gonna be playing defense one-on-one? Does that mean you're gonna lock your man if you're gonna stick tight to him because you probably shouldn't be somebody that's on the defensive end? This guy. I don't know how that's going to work in your system. Make sure you listen to your coach, but whatever you do, you need to play defense now. One-on-one, lock them off. If they run to sub off, that's your chance to sub off. So let's flip the script. Let's say you were on defense, your goalie just made a save, ball went out of bounds, whatever, and you're getting ready to go play offense. Your first and foremost priority is to run off the field, right? No, don't run off the field. At least in my plan, in my systems, I don't want my defensive midfielders running right off the field. They need to help in the clearing game. We want to make sure if we have a chance to create a break, let's go create a break. So you are going to break up and out. See how I did that? Up and out. This is super awkward on camera. You want to go up and out. Why? Because if you just run a straight line, it is very difficult to hit you with a pass. But if you run up and run a 45 or run a 90, you are going to be open in a position in which the goalie can hit you with a pass. It makes it so much easier, or your D-pole, whoever's got it. It makes it so much easier to make that pass. So first and foremost, don't sub out. Look for an opportunity to create a break. Help your team with the clear. Number 2, we just won our defensive stand. The last thing we want to do is give them a second chance offense, meaning we don't want to lose the ball on our defensive end. We want to make sure we get this ball cleared. So LSMs, long stick middies, oftentimes you'll see them stay on the field really long time into the offensive possession and then eventually sub off. That's what we want you to do. We want you to stay on the field, make sure we get the ball to our attackmen, and then make sure they're settled, everything's going correctly, and that's when we're going to sub off. You don't want to leave your team stranded by sprinting off the field immediately. All of a sudden we lose the ball, and oh, by the way, now we could be man down again because we just subbed off technically on defense, and we never, ever, ever do that. So make sure your team has maintained possession, then it's a great time to sub off. And the third part, I just kind of stole my own thunder there. You sub off at the right time. Once your team has that possession, once it's established, your coach starts calling whatever it is, tuna, sub, get it, Navy, sub, get it, then that you run off the field, because that's the appropriate time to do your substitutions. Now, I talked a lot today, mainly about subbing through the box. There is another thing about subbing through the midfield. Boy, I don't want to get into that today. If you want to know more about it, send me a message. I don't know. Write it down below. Tell me you want to learn more about midfield substitutions. It's a little more complicated, but for most groups, most ages, subbing through the box works perfectly. Thanks for stopping by this week. Hopefully you learned something about substitutions. If you did, hit that like button down below. Make sure you subscribe. We are over 1K on the subscriptions. Let's go. Let's keep rolling it forward. You guys are awesome. Thanks for stopping by this week. And as we say around here, don't forget the little things. Sub at the right time.